Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. IOUs have been having a devastating economic consequence on people, their ability to do business, and provide services to the state. I introduced AB 1506 as an urgency measure to mitigate that damage. The bill simply forces the state of California to accept its own IOU. Many of these businesses have received hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of IOUs, and at the very same time are expected to pay taxes and fees to the state of California. This is egregious. It's very difficult on these businesses, and I want to just give you a quick example of one of the companies in my district, Noah's Homes. It's a 70-bed facility that provides for cerebral palsy patients and Down syndrome clients. Many of these clients cannot provide for themselves, have no ability to provide for themselves, and yet they receive $287,000 in IOUs. At the very same time, they're expected to pay $125,000 in taxes and fees while they're stretched out as lean as they can, continuing to provide these services. One of the concerns that I have is if they shut this facility down, they will have to deliver many of their patients to local emergency rooms because they have no way to provide for these people. This bill also provides for economic advantage to the state. Every IOU that we accept back, means that we won't have to pay interest on that IOU. And if we were to start with the IOUs that we've given out already, had this bill been in place, we would have saved the state of California over $18 million. There are over 327,000 recipients of IOUs. Almost $2 billion in IOUs have been issued as of last week. With me today, I have a couple of witnesses that I'd like to introduce. First, I'd like to have Jonathan Guiler from COS Technologies.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for having me here today. I represent COS Technologies. I am the owner. We are a disabled veteran business. I started a year and a half ago after being retired from the Army, after being hurt in Iraq. We've only been in business for a year and a half with our state as our primary customer. This year we received an IOU that represents 50% of our net sales as last year, and we are required to pay things like corporate tax, sales tax, recycling fees, DMV fees, the whole gamut of fees that we have to pay. It's not only stunting our growth, but making us go backwards. We are requiring to lay off employees. We are having to shuffle things around, not hiring new employees because of this. And I just urge you guys to think about this. This is not affecting just this small group up here, but businesses all over California.
Next, I'd like to have Sonia Peterson from Folsom Technology Group.
Thank you. I'm Sonia Peterson. My company's been in business for about 16 years. 12 of those years we've done business with the state. We understand the fiscal crisis, and we understand the burden has to be shared across the board. We all have a part in trying to get through this mess. We understand the state doesn't get revenues. You can't pay us. If you have no money, you can't pay us. We understand that. But to require my company to pay taxes and fees and obligations that are due to the state when the state has in fact broken its obligation to me to pay is frankly a little insulting as a business owner. I now have to go in and pay $75,000 worth of sales tax on products that I've sold to the state, but you haven't yet paid me for them. So where am I going to find this 75 grand floating around in my bank account somewhere? Nowhere. Nowhere. Please allow us to use these vouchers. Please allow us to give the debt you give to us back to you as payment. That's all we're asking. It doesn't hurt anyone. It's a great thing to do, and honestly, I don't understand why anyone would even be opposed to it. It harms no one. It helps us. It harms no one. How often does that happen?
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go to two more witnesses, and then we'll go to... hold up, Mr. Anderson. Just hold on one second.
Dr. Gloria
Freeman. Mr. Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold up just a second. We're going to go to two more witnesses. I know you make your introductions, and then we have a question from Mr. Chuck Calderon, so please proceed.
Okay. Dr. Gloria Freeman, she's the president of Staff USA.
My name is Dr. Gloria Freeman, President of Staff USA, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I think it's important, whether you care about my business or not, or any of the other vendors in the state, is irrelevant. We need to send a message not just to California, but to Tokyo TV, who's been in my office, to Canadian TV, to everyone in the world who's called interested in the IOUs, that the state of California believes enough in the state that they're going to take the IOUs for their own things that we want to use them for in the state, such as taxes, DMV. If the state itself doesn't accept them, we're sending the wrong message to the entire world who's affected by our economy here in the state. And so I provide critical medical services. Whether I'm able to cash them or not, irrelevant. What's really important is that we send the correct message that the state has confidence in its own IOUs and its own budgetary crisis, that they are going to redeem these at a future date. And by accepting them for taxes, franchise taxes, and corporate taxes and other fees, we're sending the correct message to the world that we're still solvent and that we're going to pay our debts. Thank you.
I have one last, Dave Ackerman.
You want to introduce him, Mr. Anderson?
He says he needs no introduction.
You need to know Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Ackerman, representing the Associated General Contractors. Under current state law, whether we get paid or not, we're required to pay our subs and material suppliers on public works construction contracts. We can't use the state IOUs to pay those subs and material suppliers, at least in this case with the support of this legislation. We could use these to pay our tax obligations to the state. We urge your support.
Thank you. We have a question from, we have another witness in support? Yes, go ahead.
Erin Gilbert for the County of San Diego, also in support.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question commentary from Mr. Calderon.
Well, first let me acknowledge that I had agreed to co-author this thing on the floor on Monday, but I'm having second thoughts about it, and so I have some questions related to those
Absolutely.
second thoughts. I think there's a mischaracterization of what is going on here. Not a sinister mischaracterization, but I think a misunderstanding is a better word. And it goes down to this: if I owe the bank money and I can't pay them, then I have to pay them interest and I pay them a penalty fee. And when I can pay them, then I pay them. And then if they don't like my payment schedule, then they cancel me. In this case, the state is doing the same thing. They're saying, we owe you the money, but we can't pay you. But what we'll do is when we can't pay you, we'll pay you 3% interest. And the reason why we're doing this is because we need the cash flow to operate government, so that if we issue in effect what it's doing, it's a forced borrowing from our contractors. Yes, it's a forced borrowing. I understand. It's not a question of
money from me.
I understand the fairness issue. But it's really, if the purpose of the state going to the IOUs is to maximize its cash flow, then that cash flow is going to be impacted by the fact that there's no one, we're receiving the IOUs back. You understand what I'm saying? The trick, or the answer here isn't so much to do this kind of repair at the fringes. The answer is to not issue the IOUs at all. And we tried to do that. This House tried to do that. This House was responsible and sent a bill over to the Senate to forestall the issuing of IOUs, and doing it with cuts. We submitted substantial cuts. It was a bipartisan bill. Went over the Senate, and the governor and the Senate, well, the governor essentially said to his party members, don't vote for it. And so, that's really the answer. The answer isn't to hold out for irrational or unreasonable reasons on paying and then fix it by doing some kind of quick fix over here. The answer is to not be irrational and unreasonable. The answer is to be caring, and the answer is to be sensitive. But that's not the way it happened. And so, I'm kind of like, I'm now having second thoughts about whether this is a good idea or not. So I just wanted to present those to you.
I think those are excellent points, and I think I can add clarity to this issue. when you're thinking in terms of who has the most stake, probably the person that has is one of the most knowledgeable people in California on this issue, I think we can all agree the State Controller, John Chang, would be that person. I hold before you a letter from John Chang in support of this bill. If John Chang says that this is good for California in a fiscal crisis, and he's the controller, I would defer to his view and his support.
Is he up for re-election?
Well, he's doing what's in the best interest of Californians.
Mr. Anderson, hold on.
I also like
Mr.
to
Anderson,
submit to you-
we got
I'm gonna
a
close this
question
quickly.
here from Mr. John Paris.
I'm gonna-
Be quick.
But here's over 1,000 letters of support from all walks of life. We've got supervisors, city council members, water districts, school boards. We've got businesses. We've got nonprofits. Everyone across California is suffering under this bill, and this would mitigate some of that. When you think in terms of Sears, and Sears issues you a credit, or any retailer issues you a credit, you have that ability of using that credit in any department of that department store to get a return on the credit. We're doing nothing more than honoring our IOUs by allowing people to do it. And the best part of all is it saves the state of California over $18 million to date. Now, I don't know how much more it's going to save in the future, but I know for a fact over $18 million will be saved in interest. We all have problems with the budget. I get that. This bill solves those problems, and that's why I know you came onto the bill, and I'm hoping you can vote for it today.
Well, but how much in cash flow do we use?
Let's hold a call quick. We're going to do this. I'm going to give Mr. John Pettis, no, we're going to do this. Mr. John Pettis is going to ask a question or make a commentary, and then we're going to close this down. And we're not going to go any further than this right now because this is a candidate for suspense. I'm not going to spend more than 5 minutes longer on this measure. We have other senators here who have to be in caucus right now, so we're going to move forward with this.
Will I be able to do a close?
You can close.
Thank you, sir.
Given that it's on suspense, I'll be brief. I understand the frustration of many of my colleagues. I share the frustration. We should never have been in this situation. And quite frankly, I think the members of both parties of this House acted responsibly at a point when we tried to avert getting into a situation where we would have to issue IOUs. Both members of both parties of this House acted responsibly. Had others acted as responsibly as we had, we wouldn't be in the situation of issuing the IOUs. The question before us now is how to mitigate the hurt. And I think that this measure is a good piece of mitigating that hurt in allowing people that are receiving the IOUs to apply those back for obligations that they have to the state. I think there are many other things that need to be done to mitigate the hurt as well. But just as I was frustrated with others that thought we should have had an all-or-nothing solution in dealing with a budget crisis, I'm not willing to suggest that you should have an all-or-nothing solution here. So while your approach is focused in a specific area, that's good enough for me. I support it. I think it's the right thing for us to do, but I think we all have to, in both parties, work to figure out other ways to mitigate the hurt for the people who've paid the brunt of the price for irresponsible activities by others in the legislature, and definitely the governor.
Mr. Anderson, you may make your closing statement.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I agree with you fully. Look, this isn't going to solve all the problems, but it's the first step in solving the problems. We put an urgency on this bill because we were hoping it wouldn't go to suspense, because all these businesses, all these Californians, all these people are counting on us to do the right thing. When you're thinking in terms of California's creditworthiness, it won't be Wall Street that judges us or sets it. It'll be Main Street. And what we've done today and what we're doing is we're effectively saying we're such a bad debt, we're such a deadbeat of a state, we won't even accept our own paper. This is outrageous. I would ask the chair to have clemency and not send us off to the back 40 to die slowly, but to have a vote today. And the reason why I ask for this special clemency is the majority of your committee are co-authors on this bill. I ask that you just allow them today to vote it down, up or down, just with the co-authors and nobody else. You know, we have a responsibility to all these companies. We're taking good companies who have sent us quality goods and services. They've provided them in a timely fashion, and the only mistake that they have made is they contracted with a deadbeat state that won't own up to its obligations. And this bill will will take those companies who have paid taxes in the past in a timely fashion and give them the ability to pay what they owe the state by simply saying, left hand pay right hand. Let's not turn them into tax cheats because they provided goods and services to a state that won't even take its own paper. This is a great committee. You've done a great job. I ask that you reconsider and allow an up or down vote today, because every day we delay this, the deadline of the legislature is stopping. There's an urgency on this. I'd like to get it to the Senate. I'd like the Senate to pass it through. Let's park this on the governor's desk. Let's let the governor man up, take responsibility, and vote for this. We can't do that unless, Mr. Chair, you give me some special clemency that I'm asking for today.
Mr.
I know it's
Anderson.
last minute, but I thank you for your time. I thank you for your patience. And most of all, I thank you for the majority of co-authors on this committee.
Thank you much, Mr. Anderson. I don't know if you're asking for early release, or clemency on this issue, but I'm going to
Clemency,
give
not early release. Clemency.
I'm going to give the courtesy to our new Vice Chair, Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of what we've heard and what we've seen, and because I don't believe that our cash flow problems should be balanced on the back of businesses and those that are here today testifying, I would like to make a substitute motion that the bill go out to pass.
Second.
Want to make a motion?
Okay.
I have a
Sorry.
comment,
Any
Mr.
motion.
Chair.
Okay. We will entertain the motion as well as a second, and then we'll go to the question or commentary. Ms. Harkey. Okay.
I just wanted to say, to put the members, both sides of the aisle at ease, we have issued RANds. We've got bonds out now that can absorb these, and I think that's why the controller has sent the letter that he has. It's not like we're going to have to be out cash flow-wise, because the bond offering is out. So it's RANds, it's not RAWs, but it probably will be paid off by RAWs, but it's RANds right now. So there is a $10 billion RAN offering out, and I think you can feel comfortable that we're not impacting our cash flow worse by accepting these, because it is a huge imposition on these people.
The controller recognized.
Mr. Anderson, I know you're very passionate about this issue. You
I just
can't
need to
help
let her
it,
know that the letter
just add 1 second.
came out July 9th.
Thank
So
you.
it's
Okay, there
way
you go.
before that occurred.
Thank you very much. You're very passionate. I know you've spoken with me on numerous occasions in the hallways, and I suspect that between now and next Wednesday, we will continue these
I'm
conversations.
going to be camped in your front door.
I want to thank your witnesses who have taken the time to come up to Sacramento to give us the real stories of what you've endured and what you have suffered during this cash crisis and this budget debacle that we're all facing in California, regardless of one's political affiliation or party, or one is not affiliated to any political party. We're all part of the solution. Mr. John Perez, as well as Mr. Calderon, I think were quite eloquent. I have refrained from making any editorial commentary as to how we got into this mess, to the point why we need to issue the IOUs in the first place, whereas these fine men and women who have their businesses, both large and small, throughout the state of California, have to suffer because of this issue. We have a motion that's on the floor right now by Ms. Conway. It is second by Mr. Mike Duvall. The motion is to have the vote heard, a vote taken. It is defeated on a zero call. I want to assure you, Mr. Anderson, that between now and next week, I will give you the courtesy to continue this conversation to see if we can come to some sort of solution by next week, Thursday.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Have a good day.